Hi, my name is Tony Santo, and I'm a large format photographer. It's been a year since I uploaded my video on E6 film developing. I've gotten a lot of great positive feedback from everyone, so I thank you for that. I also get a lot of great questions. In this video, I'm going to answer 3 of the most commonly asked questions. 1, how much does it cost to develop your own E6 film? 2, how much chemistry do I use to develop E6 film? How many runs can I get out of a 10-liter batch? And 3, what's the shelf life on the chemistry that I use? How long does it last?
So let's look at my cost analysis for developing E6 film. The first thing that we need to look at is the type of Jobo drum that I use and the amount of chemistry and the amount of film that you can get out of each of those drums. So I've created this table that shows you the Jobo drum, the type of film and how much film that drum can hold, the amount of chemistry I use for each run in that particular drum, and the amount of runs that you can get if you used all 10 liters of the chemistry for that particular type of Jobo drum. And the last column gives you the final output of how much film you can process using that particular drum. Now, just one note, the reason why that I'm using 10 liters of chemistry is because that will leave you with the least amount of open concentrate chemistry if you mix up 10 liters. So under this scenario, I'm left with my starters opened up as well as a half a bottle of fixer. And as I'll discuss later on, that is important because of the shelf life that this chemistry has. So the first drum type that I use is 2523. I usually use this to test the viability of my chemistry once it's all mixed to make sure that I didn't mess anything up. And this will process 1 roll of 120 film. The amount of chemistry that I use to process that roll is 200 milliliters. If I were to use only that drum to process film, I would get 50 runs or 50 rolls of film out of that 10 liters of chemistry. The next drum that I own is the 2553, and this will process 3 rolls of 120 film. I use 400 milliliters of chemistry. I get 25 runs for 75 rolls, so it's a little bit more efficient than using the 2523 drum. The next drum that I have is the 2563 drum, and this holds 4 rolls of 120 film. I use 500 milliliters of chemistry per run to process that film. That'll give me 20 runs for 80 rolls of film. Now, I do want to make one note that these drums, the reels that you use for the 120 film, you could actually do 2 rolls of film per reel, but this requires this little plastic piece to stop the second roll from butting up against the first roll that you've put onto the reel. I don't have those plastic pieces, so I don't want to take the risk of overlapping the film and then not getting proper development from the film. So I basically only run 1, 3, and 4 rolls for these Jobo drums respectively. The next drum that I have is the 3005 Expert drum, and that holds 5 4x5 sheets of film. And I use 300 milliliters of chemistry to process that film. That'll give me 33 runs or 165 sheets of 4x5 film. That same drum will also process 5 8x10 sheets, and I use 650 milliliters of chemistry. That would give me 15 runs out of 10 liters of chemistry or 75 sheets of 8x10 film. The last drum that I have listed here is the 3010 drum, and this will actually hold 10 4x5 sheets of film, and I would use 350 milliliters of chemistry to develop that film for 28 runs, which would give me 280 sheets of 4x5 film that you could process using that particular drum. So in October of 2014, I processed 66 sheets of 4x5 film and 25 rolls of 120 film from the 10 liters of chemistry. I actually had about 2 liters of chemistry left over, and this was to be expected since I was trying to figure out the process and get this whole thing down and have it more efficient. So I wasn't that efficient my first time around. I got a little bit better the second time around in September of 2015, where I processed 98 sheets of 4x5 film, 2 sheets of 8x10, and 17 rolls of 120. Even though I got more efficient, unfortunately, one of my tanks, the color developer, had a leak in it, and I lost about 1,800 milliliters of chemistry. So I did end up losing about the same amount of chemistry this time around as well. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to throw in how much I was spending on film developing to begin with. And this is a table. I became a large format photographer in January of 2009. So these numbers are from 2009 to 2014. And you can see that I progressively spent more and more money through 2013. The reason why that the dollar amount drops in 2014 is simply because I started hoarding my film to develop it myself. So there's a significant drop off in the amount of money that I was spending on having the film developed, as well as the shipping and handling costs. So when you total that up, that was about $2,500. That's always a nice check of reality when you add those numbers up. So how much did my chemistry actually cost me that I purchased from southpointphoto.com with the freight? About $746.59, and I was able to process 164 4x5 sheets of film, 2 8x10 sheets, and 42 120 rolls. So a pretty decent amount of film. So what I thought it would be kind of interesting to do is to come up with numbers on how much that amount of film would cost if you shipped it off and had it developed. And this assumes that a 4x5 sheet of film is going to cost you $2.50 a sheet, which is actually a pretty good price. 120 roll, I'm assuming that that's $7.50 a roll. And an 8x10 sheet of film, I'm assuming that that's $7.50 per sheet. So this total comes to $740 just for the chemistry processing of it. So in other words, for the lab to just develop the film, it would have cost me $740. That doesn't include the shipping and handling. Now, if you're lucky and you find a lab that actually has a mailer, you'll actually get a pretty good rate. The last lab that I was using was charging me $5 for shipping and handling, and you could actually ship the film for free to them, which was nice. But if you don't have that kind of setup, you're going to spend anywhere from $10 to $20 to ship out your film, depending upon where the lab location is with respect to where you are. So just in these 2 runs that I've done, I've already, at least matched the cost of sending the film out and having it processed by a lab. So I'm doing pretty good there. But it gets even better. When you take a look at the amount of chemistry that you receive, it's phenomenal. What I've done here is I put a table together of the chemical, the number of 10-liter batches that you'll get out of the amount of chemistry that they send you, and then the price for that chemistry. So as an example here, the first developer, you actually get enough chemistry, you get 40 liters to run this process 4 times. So you can mix up 4 10-liter batches of first developer. The first developer starter, you actually get 75 10-liter batches out of that, simply because you're not using very much of any of the starters in these steps. The least amount of chemistry that you get comes from the color developer and the bleach. You're only getting enough chemistry to run the process twice if you mix up 10-liter batches at a time. So I've already used up my color developer and bleach, so I'm going to be spending about $150 to get the process going again for the next time around. So it's pretty efficient to develop your own film, and it's pretty economical as well. You'll have a lot of chemistry, and you get a lot of bang for your buck, assuming that you don't mind developing the film yourself. Of course, there's always the time factor. It does take quite a bit of time to develop the film, even with an efficient process. So that's a consideration that you want to think about when you're thinking about developing your own E6 film and getting your process going. So let's run the numbers. This table shows the cost and savings of running the process 4 times. I'm using the data from my most recent processing listed below the table. The first time that I ran the process, I spent about $746 to get my chemistry, so I saved on the shipping and handling that I would normally spend to mail my film to a lab. The second time that I ran the process, it cost me nothing, but I saved $387 in the equivalent amount of sending off my film for processing. The third time that I will run the process, it will cost me about $209 with freight, but I will still save $178 in the equivalent amount of sending off my film for processing. The fourth time that I run this process, it will cost me nothing, and I'll save about $387 in the equivalent amount of sending my film off for processing. So I will have spent $956 on chemistry and freight. However, I save about $953 in the equivalent amount of sending off my film for processing, excluding the shipping and handling. And the good news is I'll still have chemistry left over for future processing.
Here's a quick tip that'll help your process run a little bit more efficient.
To help keep track of the number of water washes that I've done, and also to keep the volume of water consistent, I lay out 10 cups in front of the Jobo. So how long will the chemistry last? My philosophy is to do absolutely nothing to preserve the chemistry. I prefer to do what's called one-shot processing, where you only use each chemical one time and then discard it. This method ensures that I'm using fresh chemistry each time that I run a batch of film. I also don't have to be concerned about exhausting the chemistry because I've used it several times to process film. In my opinion, it's all about simplifying the process while optimizing the results. Each chemical comes with a package insert that contains useful information to guide you in your process. In this table, I've compiled all the recommended shelf life data reported by Fujifilm to show you what you can expect out of the chemistry. In the first column, I've listed the chemical followed by the unopened concentrate and how long you can expect the chemistry to last. In the next column, the shelf life for open concentrate is listed, followed by the amount of time Fujifilm says that you can expect out of the chemistry that you have mixed up. The last column describes the color of the chemistry once you've mixed up the concentrate into working solutions. In order to determine the shelf life of your chemistry, you'll need to decipher the Fujifilm date code. In the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, there is a picture of one of my chemicals. This happens to be Color Developer Starter. Just below the product label, you'll notice that there is a sticker with a series of 8 characters comprised of letters and numbers. This is the label that contains when the chemical was produced. So let's use another example here to decipher this code. The first character tells us the place of manufacture. So in this example, the M represents the Chicago plant. The second character tells us the year of production. And in this example, the 4 represents the year 2014. The next character, the letter H, tells us the month of production, which corresponds to the month of August. Now January would begin with the letter A, so you'll have to determine what letter corresponds with the month that you've been given. The next 2 characters tell us the production run. So in this example, the 0 and the 1 mean that this was the first run of the day for that chemical. Now the remaining 3 characters tell us the product code. So in this example, RAD points to the first developer. Just to summarize, characters 2 and 3 are the most important in determining the shelf life of your chemistry. So how long did my chemistry last before it went bad? In order to answer this question, I periodically develop test pieces of film over the course of 30 days. What I found in my working environment was that I was able to get about 26 days of flawless performance. So somewhere between day 26 and day 30, my chemistry went bad, as is evidenced by these two pictures. The take-home message for me is that I should try to process all of my film that contains important work within the first 2 weeks of mixing the chemistry. However, it's probably not a bad idea to regularly run a test piece of film through the process to rule out spoiled chemistry. Fujifilm does provide some helpful insights into using the process film to determine what chemical may be possibly to blame. They report that if your shadows appear to be green, then the reversal bath is probably exhausted. If your film takes on the appearance of both a positive and a negative image, like mine did, then the color developer is probably to blame. Yellow or muddy highlights seem to indicate a problem with the fixer, while red spots on the film point to exhausted bleach. A nice gentleman by the name of Art Yokel from southpointphoto.com passed along some great tips that I thought were worth sharing with all of you. As far as the appearance of the first developer and the color developer goes, he suggests that they should look like a Coors or a Budweiser respectively, or they might be exhausted. The picture below shows my prepared chemistry soon after I mixed everything up, and in fact the developers do kind of look like those beers. One observation that I made over the course of 30 days was that the first developer eventually took on a fluorescent lime green color, and the color developer slowly deepened in color and took on a cloudy appearance. Now, the reason why the chemistry goes bad is because of oxidation. That is, the oxygen in the air that is left in the container removes electrons from the chemical, thus reducing its performance. To minimize this, Art recommends removing as much of the air as possible by adding glass marbles to the container to raise the level of the chemistry such that it displaces the air out of the container. I should point out that there are collapsible bottles available that you compress as you use up the chemistry so that less air remains in the bottle. Some photographers like to use a heavy gas such as Tetnal's Protectant to form a barrier between the chemical and room air. I haven't tried these techniques, so I can't speak to their effectiveness, but then again, I prefer not to add another layer of complication since I develop my film within a short time frame. Moving on to the Conditioner Plus and Bleach, Art recommends using a small aquarium pump to circulate room air into these containers because these chemicals will actually perform better with a small amount of oxidation, and thus they'll last longer. The last tip is to simply store your chemistry in a cool, dark place with the lid screwed on tightly. I would recommend checking the lids of the unopened concentrates as soon as you receive your shipment to minimize any risk of oxidation. On a final note, I found that over the course of 30 days, the appearance of the Reversal Bath, Conditioner Plus, Fixer, and Rinse Plus didn't change much. However, the best way to really determine if your chemistry is still performing at its best is to check pH regularly. That is, how photo labs keep their chemistry performing well despite reusing the chemistry over and over again. They simply use an accurate pH meter and adjust the balance of the chemistry so that it is within normal limits. For years, Fujifilm Hunt has produced a 5-liter E6 kit, but it hasn't been available to U.S. consumers. In addition, foreign suppliers of the kit will not ship to the United States because it is a prohibited substance aboard aircrafts. I'm really excited to report that it appears that Freestyle Photographic in California will be carrying the kit sometime in December of 2015. This is a great option for individuals who don't want to spend a lot of money up front to purchase a massive amount of chemistry, but yet they wish to process their film using the traditional 6-bath method I showed in my previous E6 video. So I would definitely recommend checking this kit out if you're interested in developing your own transparency film.
Well, as always, thanks for watching. Hey, where do you want to go next?
Let's go this way.
Okay.